when people are reading your PRFAQ and they start from the press release, like at the end of page 1, they're like, I get it. PRFAQ is also a mechanism for you to save a lot of resources, right? It's better to know early on that something might not work than spend 6 months investing on it, just realize, oh, oops, like customers don't care about this.
I like to hear stories like that. I'm not going to call them failures because this is not really a failure. I call them success.
You don't put your name on your own PRFAQ, right? Because the message here is we are evaluating an idea, not a person.
Welcome. This is an Hour of Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Lyoshin. Marcelo Calbucci joins me today to talk about PRFAQ, a framework for driving innovation. We will discuss how PRFAQ helps teams refine ideas, align stakeholders, and bring products to life, while also uncovering Marcelo's insights on innovation, startups, and the future of product development. Welcome, Marcelo. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're actually going to try something different. Marcelo has agreed to run a giveaway of his book, which I have right here. This is the book, and basically how this is going to go is we're going to add a link to a giveaway to the show notes, and you can go there and enter your email. And after 7 days, we will wait 7 days for everybody to submit their emails. And Marcelo will run a raffle, pick a winner, and you will get notified on the email that you submit. So make sure you submit the correct one. And that's pretty much it. And you will receive the book. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, it's full of insights. Highly recommend. Plus it's free, right? So why not do it? So, all right. So we got that out of the way. And why don't we start with a little bit background from you, Marcelo, what work that you do, and just a few words to start.
Yeah, sure. So I really started with software when I was a teenager. I got my first computer, got really hooked into the idea of like building software to solve people's problems. And I went to computer science school in Brazil. Graduated. Shortly after that, I was hired by Microsoft, so I moved to the US. I spent 7 years working at Microsoft, leading an engineering team there on the Bing search engine when Bing was just getting started. Then I felt the urge, to found my own company, and I left Microsoft for 18 years. I was a startup founder, work on many startup studios, both in Seattle and in London. And 3 years ago, I joined Amazon, which is the opposite of a startup. I was really curious about the culture there. I spent 2 years at Amazon, and right on the beginning of my experience at Amazon, the first few weeks, I started to experience the PRFAQ framework, the press release and frequently asked questions. And I fell in love with it. I felt like as a founder, as someone who led product organizations and technical organizations in the past, this framework could really help a lot of people. So when I left Amazon, I said, why not write a book so I can evangelize this framework for other people? Because I really think it's very beneficial for any executive, innovator, product leader, tech leader out there. So wrote the book, published just a couple months ago. And now I'm out there talking about it so people can learn about the framework.
Yeah, okay. Pretty cool. So what was one thing, for example, that you really liked about it that made you start promoting it, basically?
Yeah, let me go back to my first few weeks at Amazon. I didn't like it. I didn't like the framework. It was very weird, right? Like you're reading this 6 pages and you're reading silently in a meeting. And then you have conversations and the document is formatted in a strange way. It's all text, no graphics. It has line numbers on the side. So like the first 2 or 3 were like, this is so weird. Like this is not going to work. But then you realize, wow, the conversations that follow after this document are so much better, so much denser in the quality and the data and the insights than what I was used to, which is like you go to a meeting and you have a PowerPoint presentation and like it's clunky and interrupted, and the person presenting like lose their thought, and like people start debating with each other without knowing like the answer is already on slide 5, but we didn't get to slide 5 yet. So it felt like it was a much better way to talk about big thinking ideas than, you know, when you use other formats. So I really like that, and it worked really well for me. And I think it can work really well for a lot of people.
Okay. So why don't we go through core elements of PRFAQ so we can better understand the structure of the document?
Yeah, so there is like 3 main sessions to the PRFAQ, right? The first one is the press release. You write the press release that represents a state in the future, but you write today, right? So you're saying like, today we are launching this product, but you haven't done anything yet. So the press release is not a press release you're going to send to the press at all. It's just an internal document to establish the vision and the inspiration for the team. Then you have a 1-page for a customer FAQ. And customer FAQ is like, what questions would the customers ask if they read the press release? For example, how much is this going to cost? Where can I get started? Like, do I need to import my data? Can I authenticate with Google? Whatever customer questions are important on that context. And then you have 4 pages of internal FAQs. And internal FAQs are questions such as, who's the customer? What problem are we solving to them? How are they solving this problem today? Where are they finding the solution? What is our solution? How is our solution better than what the customers are doing already? Questions like that. And that really helps refine the strategy of what you're doing, right? Are you going to do mobile first or web first? Are you going to do a product that is very narrow but integrates with lots of other products, or are you going to do a product that is very broad and they don't need to integrate with anything else? So these are all like strategy questions that are going to put it there. And the strategy question really answer questions about feasibility, viability, desirability, and value for the business and for the customer of what you're doing. So the way you build this document is in reverse order. You start from the internal FAQs first, then you write your customer FAQs, then you write your press release, but you read it on, you know, top to bottom.
I see. So you start with and then you define it from customer's perspective, and then you define it from internal perspective, and it all on 6 pages. Does it cover, or like does it go through big functionalities of the system, like something that will be done throughout multiple years, or this also can apply to something smaller, like on a tactical level for the quarter, for example?
Yeah, this document is 100% about strategy and vision, right? So what you're answering is like, why are we doing this? And the why is in the context of like, what is the benefit for the customer, right? Why would they want this? And what is the benefit for your business? Like, why should we do this, right? Among all the other things that we could be doing, like why this one sounds like a good idea. So you usually don't put things that are tactical. Like you don't put technical plans, you don't put roadmap, you don't put a specific list of features or workflows or wireframes, unless they are important for the conversation of strategy, right? So what I say, people ask me like, hey, should my PRFAQ be like a big vision that like 5 or 10 years ahead, or should be do what I do next week or next month? Neither. You should be somewhere in between, right? You should be more or less 12 months, something that feels like achievable in a reasonable time frame with a reasonable amount of resources. Like you can't like just dream things that you cannot execute on. You have to have some level of confidence, right? So even though I said like you don't include anything tactical about it, if you're trying to do something that requires some technology discovery, you might want to talk about it, because like you don't know if that's even possible, right? Particularly in the age of AI, like we can dream a lot of things, but sometimes it's not feasible, either because of the cost is too high, or because it will be too slow, or because we don't have the team that needs to build that. So you need to incorporate that into the document for that context. but you wouldn't go as low level as say like, we're going to use this particular LLM with this particular prompt to do this particular feature. That's already on like plan mode, right? User story mode. You're above that first.
I see. And then another question I have is, why started with press release? What's the benefit there?
Yeah, so the press release is an interesting format, right? Press releases have been around for a long time, and people don't use them much anymore. However, press release has a structure to it. So the PRFAQ has a very prescriptive way for you to write the press release. It has like 7 paragraphs, and I explain how you write each one of those paragraphs. And what that does is when people are reading your PRFAQ and they start from the press release, like at the end of page 1, they're like, I get it. I get what we're doing for the customer, and I get the value that we're trying to deliver here and the problem that we're trying to solve. So you put everyone on the same page. It's also very inspirational because the way you write is as if the product is already here, right? So imagine you have nothing and you're writing like, today we are launching this new product for this customer that solved this problem that they had forever, yada, yada, yada. People go like, wow, I really want this future to exist. I'm getting excited about it, right? So you get people inspired, but also on the same page just to get started.
I see. Okay. And then I wonder how often does it happen that it's actually after 12 months, everything is done and it looks exactly as it was described in PR. Has anybody done any analysis on that, how close it is?
I don't think people have done an analysis, but usually it's close enough that you feel like, yeah, this matches what we release, but it's not identical, right? Because as you go building some stuff, you realize, well, some stuff was harder, some stuff was easier. We end up doing more here, doing less there. But the PRFAQ is really a North Star direction for you. Like, so everyone is like marching on the same direction versus when you don't have something like that, teams might like diverge on their idea or their understanding of why we're doing and the key metrics that we're trying to achieve. So the PRFAQ helps everyone get aligned and like move on the same direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there are other frameworks that sounds maybe a little bit similar, maybe in some way at least, like Lean, for example, or design thinking. Have you thought about comparison between them, and if there are any differences or similarities that maybe make people like more think about it more in that context?
Yeah, I think these are complementary frameworks. So Lean UX Canvas, business model Canvas, design thinking, Sprint is another framework for discovery. Like you can use them in combination of a PRFAQ. Usually what I say is the PRFAQ is your starting point. Like the first thing when you have an idea, like, oh, should we do this? Start with a PRFAQ. Then as you write the PRFAQ, you're going to notice gaps in your knowledge, your understanding, or like what you need. And as you hit those gaps, you go like, oh, you know what? We should do some customer survey. We should do, some, UX research. We should do, some data analysis here. So you come back and then you keep filling in the PRFAQ information until you get to the end of the document and you have your first draft. And then you go around and like you rally your team into reviewing this PRFAQ, right? So they can contribute to it as well. Different than other formats where you're presenting something to the team, PRFAQ, you're pulling something from the team. Like you want them to contribute to make the document better. So you collaborate a lot better in a PRFAQ than in other formats.
I see. And then these questions from customer FAQ and internal FAQ, are those predefined or those depend on your idea and you basically writing them and answering them at the same time?
Yeah, there is categories of questions, right? So there's a few things that are very important and you need to answer, but you're going to adjust the questions to your idea, right? To your innovation. If it is a product, a service, a program, whatever you're doing, right? So some of the questions that you're going to answer are about like customer, problem, solution, discovery, feasibility, viability, value of what you're doing. And in the book, I have more than 60 questions that you can get inspired from. So you start from there. But often you're going to end up with questions that are very specific to your product, right? Maybe your product has a privacy angle that you need to consider, and that privacy angle is strategic, right? Like where you're going to store the data because of GDPR or some other element. So that might be an important question to have there. In other products, it might not be as important.
I see. Are there any sort of mistakes that people make when answering these questions, or maybe overlook something from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of them. I would say one of the mistakes is to go too detailed. Right? Like you're answering the questions and you're like talking about the implementation and the technology and the feature. Like you don't need that, right? That is important, but not for this document. This document is really vision and strategy. So anything about how you're going to do the work and the details of the features and how the feature is going to work, you can move that to, a product requirements document or some user story or Jira, whatever. Like don't put that on the PRFAQ, right? So you want to focus on the high level. That is probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make, and end up being strange because then the PRFAQ feel more like a plan instead of a vision and a strategy document.
I see. Yeah, makes sense. And another related kind of question is how to know when it's ready to be presented. Is it more like one shot, or is it more iterations and you can present it multiple times?
Yeah, it's a series of iterations, right? So what you're doing is you're writing your draft of the PRFAQ. Then you're going to have a series of meetings that I call like review sessions. So you're going to group people, usually by function or by team or something that makes logical sense. And you sit with them and review with them, might be like with 5 or 10 people at a time, depending on the size of your organization. It might be with just one other person. And you ask them to read, provide feedback, and like tell you like concerns, what they think it's right, what they think it's not right. You come back and you incorporate that into a new version of the document. Then you do another review session with another group of people, another group of people, and another group of people. At the end, like everyone that's going to be involved in the project, everyone that is a stakeholder on the project, everyone that's going to be working on the project already saw the document, right? So in a way or another, they've been involved. And the last meeting that you're going to have is a decision meeting, which is usually going to be with an executive or sponsor or investor or whomever, right? And this meeting is not necessarily the first time they are seeing the document. They might have been part of one of those other meetings first. So they also contributed to it, right? But it's important to call out a decision meeting so you can make a decision about, is this a go? Is this a no-go? Or is this a not now?
I see. And how long does it usually take, on average, I guess, to go through draft to the final decision?
Yeah, the process, it depends on the size of the organization, the bureaucracy of the organization, how many people are going to review. But a reasonable amount of time is 2 weeks. You can do the whole process in 2 weeks. And because of that, I say, like, if you're going to do a feature or a project that is going only a week long or 2 weeks long, a PRFAQ is not the right framework. But if you're going to do something that is like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months long, or is a new initiative, or the risk is very high for the business, then PRFAQ is a very good instrument for that. But a PRFAQ can take longer as well because some projects are more complex, right? But I think 2 weeks is a reasonable time frame.
Yeah. Because I know, for example, in my organization, when we write in, we call them proposals for new work. And when we write in this document, we usually ask to a little bit estimate on how much it will cost, who we need, like traditional project charter, if you will. Does PRFAQ has any of that information included, or is it just describing the idea and what we want to do?
It absolutely has, right? So the 3 pillars of the iron triangle are part of the PRFAQ, right? So you're going to talk about when you expect it to launch, what kind of resources you need, both people, data, API, money, anything like that, and what is the scope. However, you don't go into a very high level of detail, Like, for example, let's say resources. Let's speak on resources. So you're not going to list the function of each person that you need and how many hours they're going to use on this project. None of that. But you need to say, like, this is going to be a 10-person project, right? And it's going to take 6 months for us to launch this. Otherwise, you can have strategic conversations because it becomes wishful thinking. Just say like, well, we're going to build this and like unlimited resources. That's not realistic, right? So you have to put the boundaries there so you can have those conversations. So what you mentioned about like project charter, usually most of that is included on the PRFAQ.
So, and that would be which part? In the PR part or in the questions?
In the question, in the internal FAQs. The internal FAQs is for the team to make those critical decisions about the viability and feasibility of this project.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, cool. Are there anything or how people measuring the effectiveness or measuring the outcomes, rather, success of the outcome of this PRFAQ proposal or document? Are there listing specific success metrics or goals or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think of the PRFAQ as part of the bigger project, right? The same way that a proof of concept is part of a bigger project. Like having a proof of concept that is successful doesn't mean much unless it's converted into, a bigger thing, like a product. Just learning from a proof of concept that something is possible and then putting that on the shelf and say like, we are done here. Like, what did you do then? What value you created for customers or for the business? Right. So the true measure of successful PRFAQ is, did it deliver, a product that is better for customers and for the business than if we hadn't done it. So that's how you measure. At the same time, a lot of PRFAQs probably lead to a decision not to pursue an idea, right? Which is okay too. And then the value that you're getting out of that is, are you learning, about this opportunity? Are you learning about the problem, the customer, the solution, and what wouldn't work? So in a way, a PRFAQ is also a mechanism for you to save a lot of resources, right? It's better to know early on that something might not work than spend 6 months investing on it, just realize, oh, oops, like customers don't care about this, right? So the PRFAQ help you think about that early on.
I think this is the key moment right now, because many times I see people writing these proposals, PRFAQs, or some pitches to do something, and they basically fight until they get yes. And they provide more evidence, justification, they maybe cut scope, they cut money or whatever, reduce number of people. They do everything possible to get yes, and then start doing this. And maybe if you get in this, if you have to go through those hoops to prove that your idea worth executed, maybe you should stop and it's not worth executing, right? Find some other ideas. I think this is
right.
I think this is like the great insight from this work. If you get in rejections, maybe it's not because it's you, it's just the idea is not the best. Like, can you think of another idea? This is a great one.
Yeah, one peculiar thing about PRFAQs is that you don't have the author name on it. You don't put your name on your own PRFAQ, right? Because the message here is, we are evaluating an idea, not a person, right? The idea should be good by itself, regardless of who is proposing it, right? So like focus on like, how can we make this work, not on like who is going to be doing the project.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Like, remove face and just focus on that what customer wants or needs. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Do you have a success story when that you can mention, maybe when the PRFAQ was written and executed and it's a great value? What was it and how did it go?
Yeah, I have two of those. So the first one is, everything that Amazon does starts with a PRFAQ. And I mean everything. Every new business, new product, new program, new process within the company, like they always start with a PRFAQ. So imagine all products from Amazon, like Amazon Prime and Kindle and Alexa and every service on AWS, all started with a PRFAQ. That is how the company does, and it works really well for decisions. By the way, there are many more products at Amazon and programs that started with a PRFAQ and Amazon decided not to do it. right? So it's a great process for that as well. The second example that I'm going to give is I wrote a PRFAQ for my own book, right? Like, should I write this book or not? Because I thought about the book as a product, right? And as a product, it has a customer and it's trying to solve a problem for this customer. So I try to capture that in a PRFAQ to help me clarify, like, who is this book for? Why are they buying? How are they solving the problem today? So as I was writing the book, it helped me a lot because I had that anchor to get started.
Yeah, that's a great story. With the book, it basically applies to anything. And writing a book is also quite a project, takes a lot of time. So that's good to have something to rely on and do research up front. So you're writing something actually people will like and enjoy and read and get value from, and not some, there's tons of books out there that I sometimes return back and like, what is this?
Yes.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah. Okay, cool. Are there any examples when, well, you said there are some ideas that are probably rejected and sitting somewhere there in archive. First of all, I would like to look at those and just entertain myself by what are they not doing? Maybe I need that.
Yes.
Do you have an example what was maybe failed or what was rejected and maybe some reasons why?
Yeah, I can give an example, a personal example again. I was considering starting a new project early in the year with a bunch of investors and a new program in Seattle to raise some funds for startups. And then I decided to write a PRFAQ. And in the process of writing a PRFAQ, I realized that I didn't know enough about the customers being entrepreneurs. So I went out there and I talked with 12 founders, and said like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Would this solve this problem? What problems do you have right now? And that led me to decide not to pursue that project anymore. Exactly because as I was writing the PRFAQ, I realized the problem that I assumed the customers had wasn't as important to them. So that level of clarity decided to say, like, wait a second, this is not a project worth pursuing.
Yeah, and this is great. I like to hear stories like that. I'm not going to call them failures because this is not really a failure. I call them success because you're not going to waste your time and money on something that is not needed. And I was talking to one of the founders not long ago, and he said they were working on this idea. They had this very cool idea that it's going to solve the problem for people. They built it. They spent like 6 months building it. And then when they launched it, it didn't go. It didn't work. And they had to like go through 6 iterations of relaunching the same idea, but targeting different markets, different people, slightly different problems, until they finally found who actually had that problem. And that was quite a journey because they were almost bankrupt, but they finally found their market and launched successfully. But it's always amazing to me how people have this perception that they know how to solve something. They think everybody will give them their money for it, and at the end of the day, nobody cares. So
Yeah,
it happens more than not happening. So
yeah, that's right. It happens a lot, but it's hard to know for sure. You're never gonna know, right? But what you're trying to do is to minimize risk, basically, or mitigate risk early on. You still might fail, but like you should do some pre-work ahead of time to really know your customer and their problems and if your solution is going to address it.
So if somebody's listening right now and they want to start with PRFAQ framework, what would you suggest them how to start, basically?
Yeah, I think the best way really is reading the book because I include a lot of information of how you create a PRFAQ, how you write the PRFAQ, and how you use a PRFAQ. But the book's website also has a lot of resources that I put out there, including PRFAQ examples. I think that's where people should start. Like download an example, read it so you understand what it looks like. I also have a lot of articles and other resources online for people to get started with that.
Okay, yeah, great. That makes sense. So, and then I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about your experience in you ran startups for a while, and then you also worked in big organizations. How would you say the whole innovation culture or approach to innovation is different between big tech versus small startups or maybe studios, like you said?
Yeah, so the difference is on a big companies they can make a lot of bets, right? They can try many different things, many different initiatives, and see which one works. And they also have a long time to see if this thing's working or not. Usually 3 to 5 years to see if a project's going to work before they shut it down. Startups don't have that level of latitude, so they need to focus more in one thing and be really good at one thing, right? So for startups, the most valuable asset is to find a few customers who really need what you have, right, and grow from there and expand from there. Big companies don't start like that. They don't try to find a few big customers. They try to find lots of customers all at once that have that problem. So that creates opportunity for both sides, right? So because they are chasing different types of problems and solutions.
So you would still recommend using this PRFAQ framework for startups to assess the ideas, not just because they're moving fast and maybe serving smaller audiences in the beginning, at least. It still makes sense for them, right? It's not going to be
Yeah,
overhead.
absolutely. I think if you're just like a single entrepreneur doing your own thing, maybe you want to start a podcast, maybe you want to launch a new product, maybe you want to launch an e-commerce website, you can use the PRFAQ. If you're a small startup, like just you and your co-founder, maybe 5 people, maybe 10 people, you can use the PRFAQ as well. And if you're in a big company, the difference is that you have to think of the PRFAQ as what you do on your team or your division, not for the entire company, right? So Google wouldn't have like a PRFAQ for the entirety of Google, but like a team within Google might use the PRFAQ for their decision, their strategic and vision elements that go into that document.
I see. I see. Are there anything else, I guess, for startups or for startup owners that they should take from big tech in terms of innovation and good practices or frameworks like PRFAQ or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the way big companies and startups operate are very different from each other, right? Both because big companies make multiple bets and startups make one bet. But also the value of startups is that they can move fast, like they can iterate fast, right? So whatever you're learning, you learn faster at a startup than you would learn on a big company. So leverage that for your advantage. What big companies bring to the table is a little bit of a bigger vision of things, right? Like if they're going to bet on something, they want to bet on things that can have huge potential. And sometimes startups think too small. Depending on where you are, like if you're in the Bay Area, usually startups tend to think bigger. But outside of the Bay Area, sometimes startups think too small. And they need to like take a bigger approach. It doesn't mean you execute big, you still execute small, but you have like a long-term vision that is bigger than your initial one.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how much you looking at the current AI startup craziness, maybe if I can say, but
Yeah.
basically all these guys breaking records that were established by previous wave of tech, right? What's your
Yes.
take on it? How do you think things will move in the future? At what speed and any new trends that you see? Maybe let's talk a little bit about the future, maybe, and how, what you see there.
Yeah, it's so hard right now. I'm quite involved with a lot of AI startups right now, and it's super hard to predict the future, right? I think one trend that we're going to see over the next few years is the cost of LLMs is going to drop dramatically. It already dropped every year since it was created, but it still is going to continue to drop to the point that you're going to be able to run LLM locally on your computer. You already can do that, but there is like not great products yet. That's going to unleash a new set of ideas, right? I think the important thing for startups is to really understand the customer and the problem they are trying to solve, not worry too much about the underlying technology. You still need the underlying technology to support it. But if you really lock in a customer and you're helping them solving a problem and you keep applying AI to help them solve that problem better, like you're safe, right? The problem that we have today is we have way too many startups doing the exact same thing. They are applying observability and wrappers around LLMs and all this kind of stuff. That's not enough for you to make your idea defensible over the next few years.
Yeah, maybe some of these people trying to come up with something really quick, really cool, sell it, and move on to something else. There's also this trend going on that people running around asking for money for these ideas, hoping to be gone in a couple years. That's also not good, because if I'm a consumer and I'm gonna buy some tool to use, I don't want this tool to be gone in 2 years. I want this tool to be continuing be there and helping me with whatever I need to do. So that's some peace of mind for entrepreneurs as well. If you're gonna start something, start with the idea that it's gonna live for a long time and help many people, and not just some quick thing. So yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Are there any other or any ideas in product development that you're looking at other than PRFAQ, like any frameworks, any tools, any new ideas maybe that you excited about or investigating?
Yeah, I really like using ChatGPT and other LLMs to help, almost like an editor or a coach or a partner when I'm developing ideas, right? So what you don't want to do is go to ChatGPT and ask hey, come up with an idea for this problem, or write a PRFAQ for me, right? Like that's not a good use for ChatGPT, because the writing that you're doing is the thinking that you're doing. However, once you do the writing, ChatGPT is great to critique your writing. So you ask ChatGPT what are my logic issues on this document? Where I'm missing coherence? Help me understand how can I make this better? And it works like a partner providing you feedback. So that's a great approach to using AI, what I consider to be the right way.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And then, so we're coming to an end here. And before we wrap up, I just have a couple of final questions for you. What kind of advice can you give to listeners and leave them with after this episode?
Yeah, if you're leading innovation, any kind of innovation in a product, process, business, whatever you're doing, really understand your customer better than the customer understand themselves, right? Understand the struggles that they have, the problems that they have, how to address those problems, how they are solving those problems today, because that's going to give you the superpower to innovate on their behalf.
Okay, that's great. And then let's leave people with information how to connect with you, to reach out to you if they want to do that.
Yeah, the easiest way is go to Google and search for PRFAQ book. My result is going to be number 1. And from there, you can find my contact information on the author page and other resources for the book as well.
Okay, great. And then just a reminder at the end that we're going to have a link to the giveaway for this book. And we're going to, when it's out, we're going to wait for 7 days for everybody to submit their emails. And then Marcelo will run the raffle to pick the winner, and the book will be on its way. So I think that's about it. Thank you very much, Marcelo. That was very insightful. And I learned about this firsthand from somebody who's actually doing this. I heard the stories about Amazon doing this many times, but it's great to talk to somebody who's actually done it and seen it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vit, and I hope you use it on your work.
Yes, I'm already started on this book, so I'm going to finish it and try to implement it. Yes.
That's great.
All right. Thanks, Marcelo. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.